Sahana vavatu, sahanao bhunaktu, sahaviryang karavavahai, tejasvina vadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Last week we have talked about two topics. In fact, we have concluded the professions topic, and we said that every profession has a smoke and fire relationship. And this is always reassuring to hear, isn't it? So next time we think of our pluses or minuses, or we think something's not right or things are not going well, wish things could get better, how long is this going to last? Is there a way out? Or sometimes you're not in the way of that smoke, but sometimes we are in the way of that smoke. So it's really just a metaphor for anything, even our studies, right? We go through a period of fire and things are working, we're finding it relevant to us. And then the next stage of our life, we just find we're in a smoke section. We're hearing the words, but it's not that, we're not capturing that so much. Do you know this experience? The words are coming, just like before, okay? It's the same English language, but for some reason, it's just not hitting. And so this is what the individual's going through. This is the whole, the whole smoke fire relationship. So we can always keep that in mind, that it's not fair to want from life just the fire, just that warmth and coziness and beauty and shine, even though that is very much part of it also. But being the world that it is, the Vyavaharika world, there has to come a polar opposite. There has to come that smoke with it. And so, now instead of saying, for example, this too shall pass, you can just say, hey, smoke fire, or we shorten that down, SF, SF or FS or something, just always to remind us of, to kind of serve as that shock absorber. So how do we create a shock absorber in life? Well, we can create small notes in our phone, and then we can create these kinds of smoke fire, and then communication model, and then you can put something for your communication model. You can put something for managing emotions model. I personally do this also. So just those advices that really hit hard for you personally, immediately write it down on your phone. Okay, so next time you can just look at the headlines. You can see, suppose you want to communicate well, and so you can just look at that communications model, and you look at some mnemonics there. For example, first smile, introduce yourself, and create an atmosphere that creates an ease for both parties, and so on. You can have a headline for a profession. So in case we start to look at our profession in a sort of smoky way or a fiery way, we can just look at there and go, okay, smoke fire. So it's coming. You just wait. We can also further expand that and say, how have fun. Just put a fun there. You can put little games, different kind of games that you do for fun, chess, ping pong, and so on. You can add your list there. Okay, so just very strong points that really, really, really hit home. Those points we just add onto our little list. So are we doing this right now? Do we have a list like that? Okay. Otherwise, I promise you, we know from experience, it's not going to stick around. So get into the habit of writing things down. So this is regarding that smoke and fire management in life. And then we also said that verse 49 said that the non-performance of action doesn't work because it stifles the mind. It doesn't engage the mind. And so as long as the mind is engaged, contrary to belief, which is to disassociate from the world, to not be engaged, which is part of it. Also, you want to have a clean, healthy, spacious, quiet solitude in your life. But at the same time, not to the other extreme, so much so that the mind just simply starts to dull itself out, because it's just experiencing silence all day long. So it needs to have an engaging conversation, an engaging activity in life, or you can use mathematics or any activity that engages you, Sudoku or learning a new language. All of this is part of keeping us sharp. And then we moved on to the next section, which was Nyana Yoga, but it was specifically in reference to the last stage of Nyana Yoga. After some years or months of having heard the foundational reality, having heard that reality, as I explained last week, you come to a point and you say, now what? How do I now bring this and how do I integrate this with my personality? So this is a valid question for all of us. Go to a restaurant right now, okay? Suppose we're all going to a restaurant. How much of the Bhagavad Gita personality is shining through your body, through your words, your perception, and your responses with the other person? How much of it is shining in a busy place like a social gathering? That is a question of how much nididhyasana has taken place before. Okay, that's where it really comes down to practice. So the more one's able to not compromise and just go along with the conversation just for the sake of social connection, like, yeah, I belong in this conversation. I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to disagree. All of this is compromising what? Compromising those values that we have learned in the book. So how much of that inner voice says, no, this is not in line with the teaching. And so I'm going to gently, not in a disagreeable, in a harsh way, but gently voice out my understanding of reality in this busy social gathering. Again, this is where nididhyasana is important. Okay, so in verse 50, we talked about 3 stages of Jnana Yoga, nididhyasana, which is of 2 types, and it always consists of either open eyes or closed eyes. Both of them are ideal. If we are busy in our life, then we can, throughout our engagements with the world, we can use open eye engagements. That means you're engaging with the world, but are you just engaging with the Jagat? Is it just the Jagat that we're engaging with? Or is there more behind? See, this is what I mean. So this means it's not just the Jagat that you're engaging with, but then you say, what's the Jagat? What's the constituents of this world that is in which this Jiva is engaging in? And therefore that teaching starts to come through. Okay, we're not just engaging with a person right now. Yes, you're looking at a body, and these eyes are also looking at a body over there. But is it just the body? Are you just a body or much more than that? Last week, we also explained that you're not just talking to a jiva, but a transmigrating jivatma, a transmigrating being who has traveled many, 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 many bodies to come to this body right now. So this means by incorporating this depth with, as we interact with others, you're not just seeing, oh, my wife, oh, my husband, oh, my son, my mom, my dad. It's just more than that. It's just a jiva. But yes, it is a role. It's a role in reference to you. There is a mom in reference to this body. There is a dad. But beyond that, also, there is a transmigrating jiva, impersonal. So this teaching also comes into our life, nididhyasana. And closed eyes was about, as we said, you want to have a proper environment first, a strong body to be able to cross its legs, or you can sit on a chair and just close your eyes for a couple of seconds. Usually you can focus on the top point, between the eyebrows, and try to attempt to establish focus there long enough until the propensity, the tendency, the inclination, the vicissitudes for wanting to derail, that slowly starts to come down. Why is continued meditation important? Because even after hearing the knowledge, what comes back? The default way of thinking, right? The default way of seeing the world, the default way of feeling about oneself, which is really interesting, right? You've got this highest knowledge in the world, highest knowledge, straight from Lord Krishna, direct knowledge. And yet, having heard it, still, it's almost a mystery. The same person wants to take over. The same person wants to think in the same way as before. And like, how do I make this work now? The only solution is literally that practice mode. And that's the hard part, you can say. Okay. So you are Brahman. Right? The Buddhi knows that. The Buddhi knows that the light shining on this Buddhi is I. But despite that, going out, still same inclinations come back. And then we have to resort to different methods. We have to resort to therapies and psychology, which is all valid, because there are some things that Advaita cannot treat. For that reason, we have to, step down a little notch and then treat the mind in certain ways, mindfulness practices and so on. So Nididhyasana, open eyes and closed eyes. What's the purpose of Nididhyasana? Someone explain to me.
You want to assimilate the teachings into daily practice.
Assimilate the teachings into daily practice, enmeshed with your own personality, unable to tell between the person and the Bhagavad Gita. So we want to be shining Krishna. Okay, as Arjunas, we want to be shining that educator who is Krishna himself, the Lord himself.
Contemplation and reflection on what you've studied or what you've heard.
Recalling those words, those ideas, those concepts. The text is being recalled and spend time with.
Being able to quickly realize when I'm forgetting the teachings. It's being able to catch myself quickly and just say, oh, okay, there I go again.
Yes.
Just recalling in a compassionate way, again and again and again. And this is what I'm finding. Yeah.
This is a very important tool. So catching ourselves over and over again. And also I want to extend onto that. Even, see, in real life, it's very hard to catch ourselves in real life, isn't it? However, what we are better at is recording what we did say, recording in our inner minds how we did respond. And so this means that you can take a little mental note of that. And then after the conversation is over, look at that and write, what went well, what didn't go well, and what will I do better next time? What went well, what didn't go well, and what will be done better next time. And you write that in reference to the recording of the memory of the conversation. So this means every single conversation becomes a means of establishing ourselves further in this knowledge. And then going through this meditation, we said, what are the danger points? The danger points are the ahankara steps in, and it says the ahankara means the I sense, the sense of I, the ego, the individuality. And it says, it just brings the old narrative. It says, I'm not good enough. This is I'm not going well. I'm not improving. I should be improving faster. Should be improving wider. And then it starts to contrast us with other people, right? They're having a lot more work. They're kind of like accelerating, but the little small person is not accelerating as much. So the contrast and the comparison starts to come in. This is a danger point to stop yourself. So again, what's the danger point? Whenever we are comparing ourselves with others, right, with other people's journey, stop. Because the mind is it's an old habit that does this. It compares itself with someone better, and therefore it just discourages itself from continuing. And then we talked about in verse 54, the jnani indicators. And jnani just means the one that has assimilated this knowledge through nididhyasanam. So what are some indicators to give away that the jnani has understood? Well, how does one know that a jnani is true? How does one know? The only way to know is, no one else really knows, because your personality may even contradict it. One may not necessarily live a quiet life. One may not necessarily live one may even grieve, upon seeing the mother, their mother die or their father die. And then it's like, why are you grieving? This is just a body. And so this is not an accurate way to evaluate whether one's understood the knowledge or not. Everyone has the right to grieve. Everyone has the right to desire in the world, but it doesn't necessarily give away that one has or not understood the knowledge. Okay, because as we said last time, your personal samskaras will still come and cause you to want something in the world. But this time you're enveloping it with the Bhagavad Gita intellect. Therefore, doesn't have its strong power to just pull us out there from our contemplation, from our study. We talked about the 4 jnana indicators, and this is again not a means for comparison, a Vedic way to help to even categorize the jnani's own progress, because a jnani, the one who's assimilated the knowledge, even he or she can still go through grievances, can still go through frustrations in life. Why is that so? Because the old notions still keep on shining through the mind, the old samskaras, right? And so they start to dictate and they start to resist life. So yes, again, you've understood the knowledge, but still there's resistance with life. That is very much possible. So that one we can then classify as we said, the first category, Brahmavid. But the one who's gone through constant inquiry, as Elsa just said, looking, where did I go wrong? What could I do better? And, what will I do better next time? Constant inquiry, having understood the knowledge already. Okay, this is already having understood the knowledge. But constant inquiry and improvement and working on the mind and continued study and open eye meditation and closed eye meditation to deepen those insights, to integrate it in the personality. Then slowly, then those annoyances and resistances with life, they just start to go away gently. So this cannot be forced, by the way, because Krishna keeps on saying over and over again that your swabhava, your nature, will compel you to take care of business in the world. Okay, so this is no question of spiritual bypassing, because then we're not taking care of that stuff that we need to exhaust in this world, obviously enveloped in that Bhagavad Gita intellect. That's the only difference. So what's the difference before and after? Before, the person was going out there and they didn't have their intellect enveloped. They didn't have their intellect enveloped with the Vedic knowledge. This time, they can still go out there and pursue their wants and needs and desires. But this time, there's this education always following, like a companion, that buddhi that is going out there and pursuing the world in a form of desires. Okay, so we have to just make this clear, not to give this a wrong connotation that the person is supposed to be desireless, and only then they are so-called, liberated. Let's chant verse 55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yashcham sita twataha tato mam tatvato nyatva vishate tadanantaram.
Through bhakti, one knows me properly as to how much I am and how I am in reality. Then having known me in reality, he enters me immediately.
Okay, this is leading us towards bhakti. You'll notice how every verse before the next section actually leads us into the next section. So we're talking about bhakti here. So obviously the question will come up, what is bhakti? What is devotion? Am I practicing devotion? And what is the right kind of devotion to practice? And what is devotion? Is it a separate path from karma yoga, from jnana yoga, and so on? Okay, so let's talk about devotion in the next section. But before we go there, it says, Bhaktya abhijanati mam tatvataha. So through devotion, otherwise called bhakti, otherwise called, in reference to this section, assimilated knowledge. How do we assimilate knowledge? Nididhyasanam. What is nididhyasanam? Open eye, closed eye, contemplation, meditation. So through bhakti, what happens? One comes to know me. And who is this me? The very awareness that you are. We said that Ishvara has two natures, the higher nature and the lower nature. Paraprakriti, aparaprakriti. What is paraprakriti according to chapter 7? The consciousness principle. What is aparaprakriti? In chapter 7, matter. Consciousness principle, matter. Okay, you can call it upahita and upadhi. Padhi, which is a superimposition, upahita, in one short, is the final reality, consciousness principle. Okay, so one knows me, what? One knows the aparaprakriti, one knows the lower nature? No. We know the lower nature very much, don't we? We all know the lower nature. It's called atoms, it's called particles and subatomic particles and color and sounds. This is all lower nature. One knows me what? One knows the higher nature. And what is this higher nature? You, self, otherwise called Ishvara's higher nature. So what is God? What is God when Krishna says here, knows me, knows God? God has a higher nature and has a lower nature. What is the lower nature of God? That which we experience all the time. So there's no question about knowing that, because we've known about that since the beginning. We are all experts in knowing that. In fact, you know about it right now. There's just a bunch of matter in a form of face moving in different fashion. But knows me what? Knows me the higher nature of God, which is not different from the nature which pervades all minds. And what is that which pervades all minds? What is that which pervades all minds? It cannot be a thought, because this mind does not have the same thought that that mind does it? We don't have the same thoughts right now. So paraprakriti is that which is the same, changeless. So what is the same on this standpoint? What is the same on that standpoint? What is the same in this mind? And what is the same in that mind, if you want to call it in? That which makes this mind conscious and that which makes that mind conscious. Therefore, Paraprakriti is the consciousness principle. And therefore, Krishna says here, through Nididhyasanam, which is done through bhakti, constant attendance through Nididhyasanam, what happens? One comes to know me. Me is referring to Paraprakriti, the consciousness principle. And then therefore, the person claims, what is this person that I say claims? The Buddhi claims that is the real nature of myself. And then the question is, by what method does one come to know the truth? What is the truth referring to in this case? The lower nature or the higher nature? The higher nature, para prakriti. Okay, para just literally means higher. Para. Apara means lower. So just mean literally higher, lower. So what is the means by which one comes to know me? Step one, practice karma yoga. In fact, before that comes, as we said, karma yoga has 4 stages. Converting all of our ordinary actions into the spirit of karma yoga. We say karma yoga has 4 levels. So besides those 4 levels, step one, practice karma yoga. That means convert all your actions into what? Bhakti says here. Bhaktya, by bhakti. Convert all ordinary actions into bhakti. Towards what? Towards the Lord. Which nature? The lower nature or the higher nature? The higher nature. Why? So that this person who is converting those actions may come to clearly know the higher nature of the Lord, which is being spoken right here. So therefore, step one, practice karma yoga, convert actions into a sense of devotion. Why? Because it purifies the mind so that it may come to know the self. Step two, by the mind being purified, one attains or one gets what's called Ishvara kripaha. Kripaha or Anugraha are the same words. It just means grace. Now, what is grace? Grace is, in simple terms, the luck factor. You know, when you say, I'm so lucky, you're not lucky at all. When someone says, I'm so lucky, why are they saying I'm so lucky? There's just like that. There's something just pop up from the sky and they give him good luck. And even if it did pop up, there's a result for that. There's a cause for that. We may not know what the cause is, but there is a cause for that. So when we say I'm so lucky, it is what's called luck factor, but it comes from a past action. That means something was done before, and now much later, we say, oh, you know, it's just, my life is working out so well. This is called Ishvara kripaha. In fact, we'll talk about what is grace and what is surrendering to that grace and how to surrender to that grace in the next section. Okay. Step one, karma yoga. Step two, that karma yoga, that means the mind purified attracts what's called Ishvara's grace. That means you're blessed by Ishvara. Step three, this God's grace brings you the guru, brings the teacher, and brings it all together in an environment whereby you're able to be patient enough to listen long enough to hear this message long enough until you get the point of why Nididhyasanam is so important. Why is Nididhyasanam so important? Because we said the moment we leave the class, when we go to a restaurant, when we go to the shop, when we go on the driveway, when we go in the car, all notions start to come back. And therefore, we need to convert even driving into devotion so we can purify our mind. Okay. Step three, that is God's grace connects the guru and the student. That means connects us with the teacher and the teaching. And step four is by your association with the guru, with the pramana. Pramana means that by which I come to know something. So that means the methodology. It connects you long enough until you ascertain the higher reality, which is Krishna talking about here, comes to know me, which is para prakriti. So you can see these 4 stages, how one actually comes to know me. Step one, karma yoga. Step two, that karma yoga causes the purified mind. That purified mind brings what's called the luck factor, Ishvara's blessing, Ishvara's grace. That Ishvara's grace makes you attracted to subtler topics like self-knowledge, like the scriptures. And this interest, therefore, connects you with the guru, connects you with the teacher. And what's the product of that connection? Step 4, the product of that connection is final assimilation of the self-knowledge. You have solved the beginningless problem. The transmigrating jiva that has traveled endless, countless bodies has in one life solved the problem. That means there was never a time ever before when you knew, as it says, Krishna here, knows me. There was never a time before when the transmigrating jiva knows me at some time in the past. There's only one life when that jiva knows me, the higher nature, Paraprakriti. And that one life is called moksha, called liberation. Therefore, knows me and doesn't get reborn anymore. Tataha jnatva mam tatvataha. Tataha, so therefore, jnatva, so having known tatvataha, tattvabodha, having known my reality, therefore having known me, okay, Paraprakriti, the higher nature. Who is that one that knows me? Someone else? No, your own buddhi, the one that's listening to this right now. Having known me, what happens then? Vishate tat anantaram. The buddhi enters me. The buddhi comes to, you can put in brackets, comes to recognize me. But suppose we take that out, comes to recognize, and we just stick with the original word, because vishate is literally enter, to enter. So he enters me. What do you mean enters me? What, it's like, how do you enter the Lord? Okay, how do I enter? Where's the Lord? You know, can I walk through some door? Okay, so you have to now infer, what does enter mean? How do I enter the Lord?
I think it means knowing no difference. There is no difference.
There is no difference. Wonderfully put. Okay, so enters me, that means one comes to remove the erroneous notion that there was a difference between the seeker and the sought. That distance never existed in the first place. And the false notions which existed since beginningless time. And why did they exist for so long? Because the jiva, the transmigrating jiva, never took the time to pull out that distance through a pramana. Why was the pramana not there? Because going back to the 4 stages, karma yoga was supposed to be there. Karma yoga, which purifies the mind, then brings you the Ishvara kripaha, the blessing of the Lord. That brings you the guru, and the guru then assimilates the final teaching. So this means there was never a time in previous lives when those 4 stages were ever done in that proper order. And there's only one life when those 4 stages you come to as a jiva, and therefore you come to know me, the highest nature of reality. Okay, therefore the erroneous notion that there was a difference between this apparently small individual and the whole that in one life gets pulled out. Not that it gets pulled out, it gets literally just seen to be but a mere snake. It was never there in the first place. It was just a projection of my own erroneous thinking that I was a small person. And even after the ascertainment that I am not a small person, but I am not different from the whole, even then, you still carry a body for a short amount of time. And that body has to be dealt with. That mind has to be dealt with. Everything continues just as before. Life is no more special or less special than it was before, but there is a certain silent shock absorber, silent reassurance that now you understand your true nature. Okay, we can use an analogy for this. So suppose right now, the whole ocean, you and I are waves, okay, right now. Who are you? You're a wave right now. Okay, I'm a wave right now. All of our waves, and we're now just floating in the ocean. Big, vast ocean, like wow, big, tall waves, small waves, short waves, cool waves. These are really like popular waves, celebrity waves, and they're getting all the waves just coming towards them. Like, oh, I'm jealous. I want to be like that wave. Okay, the whole ocean of waviness moving about. Some are falling down, and some are new waves of being born. Constant all around us. We're just seeing waves everywhere. We're talking about waves. We're thinking about waves. We're having drama about waves. We are mating with other waves. There are wave animals. There are wave insects. There are wave people in jiva form. There are wave rocks. There are wave trees, wave birds, wave clouds. The whole thing is just one big massive wave. And you're like, oh man, how do I deal with these waves? And then we go into the library, right? We want to talk about the waves, we want to learn about the waves. But then someone says, no, stop. Let me teach you the proper methodology. You, as a wave, seem like a wave, a small wave right now. And me, the one that's telling you this message, also seems like a very small wave in this vast, huge ocean of waves. That is true, no disagreement there, but it's only apparent, because the truth is your real nature, Mr. Mrs. Small Wave, however you see yourself, is the same H2O that inheres in the entire ocean of all of these dramatic waves that are happening left, right, up, and down. The whole thing is just H2O appearing in different names and forms by the inherent power of Maya that is seemingly changing this one content, which you happen to be right now, the H2O, but actually you're not changing at all because you're in and through all things. So this means all you have to do, says the wise wave to the wave that wants to discover one's truth, all you have to do, who is this you? The Buddhi. All the Buddhi has to do is change its focus from what? From the waviness, from the name form, into the content that inheres in and through all names and forms, which is the H2O. In that similar manner, the Jiva comes to recognize one life that, yes, this person called Jasmine, called Rani, called Robert, called Lorena, Visham, etc., called all these names, surely appears like an apparently small individual. But never forget, the content of all of us is he gets to know me. And what is this me? The higher nature of reality, para prakriti, the consciousness principle. Whatever is that which makes this mind conscious, that is literally I. That is literally your real nature. Okay, so this happens through those 4 stages. Now let's move on to the next section, which is Karma Yoga in reference to devotion. The next section will be 56 to 62. Whenever we say Karma Yoga, it actually just means bhakti, okay? Because they're not different, because you're devoting your actions to the total in a form of understanding to what is it that you're devoting your actions to. So therefore, karma yoga and bhakti are not different. Chanting verse 56. Sarva karmanya pisada kurvano madvyapashrayaha madprasada davapnoti shashvatam padam avyayam.
The one who is always doing all proper actions, whose basis for all actions and results is myself, gains the end, which is eternal and imperishable, because of my grace.
This section can be interpreted in 2 ways. Number 1, even after ascertaining the knowledge in Nididhyasanam, the previous section, now you say, I still want to relate with a personal deity. Suppose you still have a need to relate to a God, but you understand there is no difference between me, the higher nature, which is consciousness principle, and him or her, which is also the higher nature, being the consciousness principle. The only difference is what? The aparaprakriti. This is a small individual, but Ishvara, from the standpoint of aparaprakriti, is what? The whole jagat, okay, the whole universe. But this is just a small individual. But from a higher nature, there's no difference between this individual and Ishvara. That is called paraprakriti. Now, suppose you understand this, but still have a need, and just maybe it could be a cultural need, could be a need of your upbringing or whatever. You have a need to relate to a God, to some God, to a deity, to a concept, to something. It doesn't hurt, but suppose that is the case. This could apply in this case. The second way to look at this section between verse 56 and 62 is, suppose whenever we talk about Nyana Yoga, it goes right over our heads. It's like, I just don't relate with this, you know. Can you bring it down a notch? So therefore, these 2 possibilities, we can interpret these next sections. So wherever you stand, this is a section for you either way. So suppose it is to relate with an Ishtadeva. Then you say, okay, so then which God do I want to relate to? Now, why do you want to relate with an Ishtadeva? Because it brings your erratic mind, our chaotic mind, back onto divinity. For that reason, we want to bring it onto an Ishtadeva, a personal deity. Is that fair to say? Okay, so it doesn't contradict your reality. It's just there to pacify the erratic mind. Therefore, a deity is very, very useful. Now, this section will talk about what's called Ishvara Anugraha. Anugraha means Ishvara's grace, and Sharanagati, which means surrender. So in Sanskrit, 2 words, Anugraha and Kripaha, they're actually one and the same. It just means grace. But the question is, what is grace, right? And how can I surrender to that which I don't know what it is? So I have to first know what is grace before one can surrender to that grace. Grace is also called, by the way, the will of God in the Western language. So how do I surrender to the will of God? And what is the will of God in the first place? Okay, so what is Ishvara Anugraha? What is the grace of the Lord? It is that which is ever available and in your favor. That is what grace is. Ever available, and it is in your and my favor. Panchatantra gives an example of this before explaining. There was a lion who was hungry, okay, the king of the jungle, apparently, and the lion decided to be lazy and open its mouth wide and just go like that, wait for the deer to come in. For days and days, it was just going like this. Come on, I'm the king of the jungle, right? You know, people are supposed to come into my mouth. I need to feed myself. Otherwise, there'll be too much hyenas and, you know, the deers will suffer because of that. I'm here to preserve the ecosystem. Did any deer walk in? No deer walked in. No deer was foolish enough to offer itself, even though the deer knows it's going to end its life one day sooner or later anyway. Someone's going to catch it, you know, so might as well just gracefully walk into the lion's mouth and just, you know, have a peaceful death. But it didn't happen, did it? So what does the lion have to do? If it wants to be graced with a meal, the lion has to close its foolish mouth and run after the meal. Only then we can say that what? The lion has been graced, has been blessed by Ishvara's will, by Ishvara's beauty, by Ishvara itself. So what did the lion do? The lion just pray there, did puja, prayer, and so on? Or the lion actually lioness closed its mouth and went. It knew what it wanted, how it wanted it, and why it wanted it. It knew the purpose, and it just went after it. It took a risk. It was risky, all right, but that is the only way you and I can gain God's grace. How? Yes, prayer is important. It prepares us, right? It gives us some hope, some energy. But most important, God can only grace you and I how? By saying, hey, fool, close your mouth and go out and make it happen. I'm trying to grace you, but I can't. I need you. The big Lord says, I need you, Jiva, so I can grace you. I'm kind of like, you know, really wishing you go out there. So go, please.
God only helps those who helps themselves.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow. So God only helps those who choose to help themselves, and therefore they're graced.
But,
I have a question about grace.
Let's go with Alison first.
Oh, thank you. So really it's just, well, in its simplest terms, it's cause and effect, because unless you put actions in the field, Ishvara can't do anything for you.
Perfect. Excellent. You're also part of Ishvara. You're also as a being. Ishvara needs you. You need Ishvara. It's a two-way thing.
In our Western culture, the idea of grace is not getting what you deserve. So it's you deserve something, but you don't get it. So here it's the opposite. So grace is kind of getting what you deserve.
What you deserve.
Because you're putting the actions into the field. So it's really impersonal.
Yeah.
It's subjective.
Yeah.
It's not that you're really getting grace. You're just putting actions into the field and you're getting back what you put out. That's how I see it. Is that correct?
Excellent. And I'll add one more thing. When you put actions with a buddhi that is enclosed by the scriptures, by dharma, then the effect of that is called grace. Because you can put out any action to the field, but what if it's unethical? Then we cannot call that grace because it is not helpful to us. So therefore, we have to put out an action that is consistent and dharmically in line with that dharma, with ethics, with harmony of the world. And only then the product of that, we then you can sort of justify, let's call it God's grace. But it is God's grace because it's helping you. Isn't God's grace always known as to be that which helps us, that which is good for us? Yes. But how do we get that which is good for us? By applying a good, harmonious action that I can gladly say, hey, I've done this good thing. Another example is the same thing, is, sesame seeds. This is from Panchatantra example. Sesame seeds as oil. And you want to get oil out. How do you do that? You just pray there and set up your pujas and do your different, different rituals? No, you have to press those sesame seeds. It can even hurt you. but you will get the oil out little by little. Okay, so what is grace? It is to receive a blessing. So every time someone says, hey, may you be blessed. You heard that before? I would say this all the time in Advaita. May you be blessed. What does the individual mean when they say that? May you just go back into your puja room and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and nothing happens? No. Every time someone says, may you be blessed, they say, may you actually close that mouth and just go. Write out, what do we need in life? What is important? What are our needs? What are we missing? What is that which is empty in us that needs to be desperately filled in so that we can move in the world properly? We need to know that and then find the resources, find the ways to gracefully, to politely, and to attend onto that. You may fail because the lion who goes after the deer may not necessarily get the deer. In fact, this happens more often than not, but at least it increased the chances. If you think about a lion's life, it lives a long time. Even though its chances of getting a deer are very low, it still lived a long time, which means what? Even if your failure is 9 out of 10, and that 1 out of 10 is enough to pull us through. Fire and smoke, we already said, it may be a fire, it may be a smoke situation. Either way, that is the reality. Another example is a teacher wants to tell a child, hey, this is not good for you. This happens in our schools. And the child's like, no, I don't want to pay attention to you because I like it my way. And then the child falls, child gets punched. And the teacher says, yeah, I told you not to speak and to bully others. Now the question is, could the child have done anything when the child was not ready to receive the grace? No, which is why even sometimes when we're told, do this, we still don't do it. And then what happens? We complain. Why? Because the individual who heard that advice was not ready to receive the grace that was ever available there all the time in the form of a teacher, in the form of advice, in the form of other people's mistakes. So this means there's no question of trying to speed up one's success because every individual is at a certain stage and they're simply not ready to receive that advice right now. So now you can say, well, it's okay. I understand. You may be falling, you may be hearing, and you may be amidst all of this lucky knowledge, but you're still falling down. Why? Just like a child, not ready to receive, because the pull of samskara is way stronger than the ability to put it aside for a moment and to pay attention to what needs to be actually done. So this means we need patience towards our own journeys. This is where we get impatient and we say, I'm not receiving any grace. My question is why? Are you going out, number one? Are you going out there? In fact, even before going out, do we know what we want? Do we know what our soul is literally yearning for? Do we know that? If we know, then the next question is, am I actually going out there like a lioness, like a lion, assertively, that Raja Guna, is it there to actually take, to make use of this field of action, this Kurukshetra? In fact, the whole journey, Bhagavad Gita, this is what Krishna was telling Arjuna. You need to go out there, close your mouth, and go and do what you need to do. Otherwise, there's no way to get out of your darkness, Arjuna. And I will just show us a diagram of this grace, just to understand it very well. This is the ignorance section. So we'll pulling this so you can see actions, like what causes our actions? What is it that impels our actions? Well, choice, nature, ego. But what is this invisible? This is called our vasana or samskara. We'll put it samskara. Okay, now this samskara, that means our inclinations, what governs what choices. So what is it that makes choice A over B? It's your inclinations, what you have done before, your habits. And these govern these choices. What do? They create a character. They sculpt our character or our nature. Okay, so when we say what's my character, what is my nature, is a product of my choices. My choices are a product of my vasanas. And then the ego, the I sense, the individual, it says, they call it the ignorant ego. It owns what? It owns and claims both the nature and the choice as my choice, my nature. Okay, so my choice, my nature. But then what is the product of the choice in the nature? product of the samskaras. But where do samskaras come from? Lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes of individuals, all which had no idea about each other. In fact, they would all disagree about each other's choices. And then the jiva in this life says, oh, it is my nature, it is my choice, but the choice in nature is a product of samskaras which have nothing to do with this individual in this life. In fact, this individual in this life would totally disagree with that individual, with that individual, with that individual. In fact, they will probably have a little, a match, a gun match. This is called ignorance. Claiming what is completely not yours whatsoever. It's a product of many lifetimes of the previous person that have inherited different bodies in this world. And therefore, grace has no chance to say anything because the gears are going this way, this gear is going that way, this gear is trying to go that way, and grace is completely silenced out of the picture because the individual is trying to claim all of their nature and choice as my. Now let's go on to the proper way. We'll call this surrender. We'll call this, again, likes and dislikes. And they are guided by what? Educated or scriptural buddhi. Okay? They're guided by education. And what is it that guides these samskaras? It is your buddhi. So you might as well just put here buddhi. So buddhi always keeps check and says, are these likes and dislikes guided by the nature, the whole, that which helps, that which is in harmony, that which serves the world? If yes, then it gives a green tick. If no, then it says no. This is called nididhyasana, by the way, analyzing what kind of actions are you putting out. Okay? So the ego keeps the samskaras under control. And these samskaras are then, by definition, in surrender mode. Now, when your samskaras are in surrender mode, that means they are scripturally guided, they're guided by dharma, then automatically they move your choices. That means by nature, your choices are surrendered. By nature, your character is also in the name of God's will, in the name of God's grace. And therefore, the grace is revealed because you're aligning yourself with the scriptures which are talking about that very grace which has moved your life and my life since the beginning. But due to ignorance, as we explained above, we never listened to it because we tried to take ownership of my. But now we just surrender. Question is, how do you surrender? Educate your buddhi according to the scriptural principles, because the scriptures are talking in the name of Ishvara. In fact, Ishvara provides us a manual. It says, if you live with this according to this manual, then I will grace you with my grace. And that grace is called the self, para prakriti, my higher nature. Therefore, you will come to know me. Okay? And you can even go one step further. You can say, this side, okay, everything on this side is Jiva Srishti. Jiva Srishti. Everything on this side is Ishvara Srishti. Therefore, you're aligning Jiva Srishti with Ishvara Srishti, as you're doing in this example. Okay, so this is whereby I'm surrendering this entire mechanism to what? To God's grace. Therefore, aligning Jiva Srishti to Ishvara Srishti. Okay, so that is a topic on grace. Now, the question is, how does one surrender to the Lord? It says, Mat vyapashrayaha. Mat vyapashrayaha. Ever depending on me. Who are you depending on mostly? Your wife, children, for happiness? Or are you depending on the higher nature, para prakriti? Consciousness principle is the Lord, is your real nature. Ever depending on para prakriti. What else does this mean? It means take shelter in me, take shelter in that knowledge. That means draw strength that Lord in a form of consciousness is already right here, right now, known as self-evident I. How to draw strength again? Simple. You can have a puja, you can have a prayer, you can have a scriptures. We can have any kind of method that reminds us of I am the consciousness principle. Full stop. That is the final conclusion. We said last week, Brahman Satyam Jagat Mithya. The Brahman is I. Take the spirit of Karma Yoga. What is Karma Yoga? It says Ishvara Arpana. Arpana means entrusting. That means I am entrusting my actions to my creator. Who is my creator? None other than the Lord. Okay, that means every action we give is offered to him, to the vast, infallible, intelligent order that is making this entire world happening right now, constantly now, because of this intelligent, infallible order. To that one, we are offering our actions. No longer is it just to our boss, is it? No longer is it just to our child, is it? No longer is it just to our colleague, is it? It is to the intelligent, infallible order to which and to whom we are always ever devoting ourselves, and all of our actions are going towards. Ishvara Arpana, that means entrusted. Ishvara Prasada, that means all of the results that come from having put our actions into the field, whatever comes back from whom? It's not coming just from him or her, it's coming back from Karma Paladata, the one who gives all of our actions, the total intelligent order from whom we are receiving this from, which means what? Now we start to treat everything that comes to us with grace, with gentleness, with a shock absorber. It's no longer, oh, why me? Hey, the Lord, infallible order, intelligence is just giving you this thing before you. Now go and deal with it properly. We can start to change our attitude towards it. This is Karma Yoga.
So Andre, does that also mean for me? I'm just thinking my mistakes. They are also Ishwaras. I mean, I'm not trying to. They are also Ishwaras. Not trying to not be responsible, but they are also Ishwaras because there's nothing separate.
So yes, however, the question is, does it hurt you if you're not responsible? Does it cause pain if I choose to relinquish my responsibility? So yes, it is all from Ishvara, but the question is, that which I'm receiving or how I'm acting in this field, is it pacifying my mind or not?
Yes, so yes, that's right. So I need to investigate whether it's my ignorance that's causing mistakes and therefore having an effect on my peace of mind.
And so is learning from your mistakes also Ishvara in that case. So Ishvara just simply provides you a field through which you can learn and improve and align yourself closer to what Krishna is talking about.
Mm-hmm. So taking away some of the guilty aspects that not, if you deliberately do something bad, then you have conscious awareness of that, but just mistakes because you don't live up to your own expectations and things like this. Which
is fine because there's no action that's ever complete. We said this before. So even if you have the most perfect action, most educated action, it's still going to have loopholes. No action will ever be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in the Vyavaharika world. We need to understand this. By understanding and agreeing to this right now, you can 50% relinquish your guilt. Okay? Because that fact is never going to lead. That is a fact that we just stated. Every action is limited. Every action is incomplete. Therefore, no action will ever be called perfect in this world. And the irony is, if it is called perfect, that is called ignorance. Because I'm missing so many variables about the world. Think, oh, a small world, it worked out well in my world. It's very relative, isn't it? And what will happen by adopting this Karma Yoga? The verse continues that we just spoke about. Mat prasadat, from my grace, that's an ablative there, mat prasadat, from my grace, avapnoti, he attains shashwatam, eternal, padam, home, avyayam, unchanging. He attains my grace, or he attains the eternal, unchanging home from my grace. That is the consequence. In other words, by his grace, what will happen? The buddhi will become open to learning from mistakes, as Alison just spoke about, learning from mistakes, and therefore removing more and more of its ignorant notions that are creating these unnecessary mistakes. Okay, so in other words, chitta shuddhi by involvement in the world. That means mind purity. Come to the guru brings you the pramana. The guru pramana shows you that you knows me, the higher nature, paraprakriti. Next verse, we'll talk about taking an Ishvara-centric lifestyle. Verse 57. Cetasa sarva karmani maye sanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam upashritya machitta satatam bhava.
Being one whose only end is myself, mentally renouncing all actions onto me, resorting to a life of karma yoga, may you become one whose mind is always in me.
So Krishna is equating buddhi yoga to karma yoga. So whenever we think of karma yoga, what is karma yoga? Buddhi yoga. What is buddhi yoga? The yoga of using our intellect. Now, how is karma yoga using our intellect? Well, it engages us in two ways. How does karma yoga engage our intellect? Before I answer, do we want to be sharp? Do we want to be mentally clear? Do we want more mental power, more kind of ascertaining knowledge, deeper, more depth? We all want that. So what do? We apply buddhi yoga. What is buddhi yoga? Karma yoga. How does buddhi/karma yoga improve that, offer that goal? Karta, which means that every action is seen as an offering to the Lord, offering to the paraprakriti, to the higher nature, which means now you're thinking, what kind of quality of actions am I even giving to him? Do I want to give him mediocre actions, or do I want to give him superb actions? I want to give him superb actions. In other words, it makes you think, it engages our buddhi. Okay, and how does the verse indicate this? Sanyasya cetasa sarva karmani maye. In other words, mentally dedicating all actions unto me. And then bhakta. This is the second way how buddhi yoga, karma yoga improves our intellect. Bhakta means enjoyer. That means every experience comes from all knowledge, all power. Therefore, it is accepted how? Objectively. To accept something objectively means I'm no longer taking it personally, as Elizabeth was stating. Okay? To take something objectively means I'm thinking from what is this actually coming? I'm looking at the facts here. To look at the facts engages our mind. Therefore, it serves as a shock absorber. For what? For the seeming choicelessness that we have about life. That moment when something just comes unexpected, totally unplanned for, uncalled for, it just comes, shock absorber now, because it is indeed coming from the infallible order. Therefore, some tragedy, right? Financial loss or something. So now you have a small shock absorber. It doesn't mean we're just going to lay back. We're going to handle it, but it's going to relieve us from getting total panic mode. Okay, because you're discerning this coming from the total field, not just, the client or from him, from her, from the total, because the client could have made a bad deal. But then again, who affected the client? Their wife could have, just screamed at them and they just, were not paying attention. But now who's the wife? Why was the wife screaming? Because she had a bad day at work. Now, why did she have a bad day at work? Because the person who made her bad day was cut on the corner at street. And why was they cutting the corner? Because some person was drinking and they just kind of stepped on someone's foot. And why were they drinking? Because alcohol was invented. Why was alcohol invented? Because and so on. So many variables create what we're experiencing right now. What motivates the devotee to practice buddhi yoga? Matparaha, the supreme goal. How is it attained? Bhava matchitaha satatam, a mind obsessed, fixated on Bhagavan all the time, obsessed. Okay? Before he prays a prayer to God, this is God's food, this is God's digestion, this is God's body, this is the God's maker. Before sleep, thank you God for the safe day. After waking up, have a mantra. After waking up, immediately say, I am existent, the field of existence awareness, whose nature is self-conscious, which pervades all bodies, minds, and then go on to your day. You go to sleep. Who am I? I am the field of existence, which is self-conscious, whose nature is complete, ananda. Then go to sleep. Wake up. Go to the toilet. Who am I? I am existence awareness, whose nature is self-conscious, which is complete, nothing missing, then go and do your thing. Constantly on Bhagavan, in every opportunity, before meeting a friend. Who am I meeting? A friend, or am I meeting Bhagavan in the form of my friend? Now, Krishna gives a warning in verse 58. Mat chittah sarva durgani, mat prasada tarishyasi, atache tvam ahankarad, nashroshyasi vinangshyasi.
Being one whose mind is always in me, you will cross all difficulties because of my grace. If, because of egotism, you do not listen to me, you will perish.
So Krishna said to Arjuna, fight because your nature compels you to fight. If you take up sannyasi role in Rishikesh, not good. You will regress. The only way to progress, Arjuna, is to do your duty, even if it's unpleasant. However, even if the Krishna, the Lord of the universe, says this to us, what's going to get into our way? We are. Our own excuses, our own notions to get out of the book, to get out of the advice. And this is why Krishna warns. He says, Atachet tvam na shroshyasi ahankarat vinangshyasi. Okay, so if we don't want to listen to this, what's going to happen? If you don't listen to me, Arjuna, due to the ahankara, right, thinking this is just the Bhagavad Gita, old stuff, it's not relevant today, right? It's just Indian, it's no one else's. I don't need this, I'm smarter. When this finishes, I'll go somewhere else. And we just say, I can hardly wait for the program to end and I'll do my thing. If we do that and never attend to the scriptures again, and just put it all aside and think we've done it, you know, we've heard the Gita 4 years, whatever, however long you've been listening. And you relax now. Oh, I'm old, I'm retired, you know, 60, 70, I can retire. The youngest ones, they're okay, but me, I can retire. If you do all of this, what's going to happen? Perishing. You will perish. Now, what does Krishna mean by you will perish? Does it mean you will go out of existence? No. What's going to perish? What's going to perish? Your body will perish. And that which perishes must be reborn. So Krishna is not saying you're going to go out of existence. You'll get another chance. But your body will perish. And therefore, for that reason, there will be another rebirth. Now, yes, the person will continue from the last life. Their maturity will be there. They will be born in an appropriate family, but they will indeed perish. Therefore, don't take this for granted. And Krishna is not, by the way, giving us a threat here. He's just simply pointing out a firm fact. It's like saying, if you drink this, you will die. It's poison. If you drink poison, you will die. Is that a threat? No. So Krishna says, having listened to this, do not put it down thinking, this is it, you know, I've got my excuses to go away now. Mat chittaha tarishyasi sarva durgani. Otherwise, with your mind, buddhi, fixated on me, the higher nature, you shall cross over all obstacles, Arjuna. Fixated, constantly obsessed, because the person develops equanimity in life, and this equanimity makes them think about their mistakes, and their mistakes makes them appreciate living a life more in line with Krishna's vision of reality, and that makes us move closer and closer and closer. Okay. Now, in the next verse, we'll talk about there's no point resisting your nature. Verse 59. Yadahankara mashritya nayotsya iti manyase mityaisha vyavasayaste prakritistvam niyokshyati.
Resorting to egoism, you think, I will not fight. Such a resolve of yours will be in vain because of your nature will compel you to act.
So again, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, who is Arjuna? He's Kshatriya, Raja Guna dominant. And so there's no question for Arjuna to withdraw to Rishikesh and live a non-Raja Guna lifestyle. So this means we have to know our nature first and then align ourselves with this nature. Whatever stage we're at, that is what we are to do. That is our stage. And the verse confirms this. It says, Eshaha vyavasayaha te mitya. Mitya in this case means ignorance. So such a resolve of yours, Arjuna, to do something else that is not in line with our nature will be in vain. So suppose a laborer wants to now be an accountant, or an accountant wants to step down and be a teacher, or a teacher wants to step down and be a business person. So there's no match there. So this means we have to match our personalities with our profession, as we spoke about last week. So what's going to happen if we do not align with our nature, if our profession is different from our nature, then we're going to be back into the world. Because Krishna says here, the very thing that you and I need to move forward in life is the very thing that is up next right now in our life. You know how every stage of our life, there's this calling, I need to address something? That stage is the one to attend to so that you can move over there. So what we really want to do is be over there, but we can't move over there because this stage is calling us and says, address this now, settle accounts with the world, finances, settle this right now. Otherwise, the anxiety is going to be there and there's not going to be interest or enough interest in the scriptural texts. So question is, what have we not settled our accounts with in this world? Do you know? What is on your mind constantly? Anxious, anxious, anxious. Secondly, it doesn't really matter if one hasn't completely settled their accounts with the world, because Krishna is not saying first settle and then do Nyana Yoga, but Krishna is just simply saying don't neglect it in the name of Nyana Yoga. Don't neglect it in the name of truth. Address both. Business owner should address both business, but also self-knowledge. Whatever you do, there's a both parallel line to it. There's a both parallel, like friends, companions. Now, the next verse will add on to this, and it would say your swabhava, your own nature, always pushes you into activity. Verse 60. Swabhava jena kaunteya nibadhasvena karmana kartum ne chasiyan mohat karishyasya vashopitat.
O Arjuna, bound by your own beauty, which is born of your nature, you will helplessly do that which you do not want to do because of your delusion.
We always seek logic before we're told what to do. Yeah? Go and clean your room. The child says what? Why? Go study for the test. The child says what? Why should I study when I can cheat? The mind always demands logic before it will follow any advice. So that objection is being posed in this verse. What is Krishna posing here? The objection is, why should you and I do our duty aligned with our nature when it is so unpleasant, so hard? In the case of Arjuna, what is his duty? Kshatriya. Go and decimate the Kauravas. That's hard. Okay. But that's Arjuna's duty. That's Arjuna's nature. But why should I do it? What? Someone else can do that. That is the objection here. Why should I? Let's see. Answer is Nibaddhaha swena swabhavajena avashaha. Because simply put, the jiva is born with its swabhava. We said the samskara, we just spoke about it. Many samskaras are pushing us forward. Momentum is pushing us forward. That jiva is pushed by that momentum. Like Narendra, Narendra was Narendra before Swami Vivekananda. He came to his guru, Ramakrishna. He says, my family has financial issues. I need help. Ramakrishna said to him, go to the temple and pray and wish that your financial issues get resolved. Now, Narendra, before became Vivekananda, where did he go? He went to the temple, and you know what he prayed for? He didn't pray for the financial issues to be resolved. He said, oh Lord, may you give me a good intellect so that I can understand who you are. He even violated the advice of his teacher. He couldn't get himself to pray for finances when all of his value, all of his interest, his nature, his Brahmana nature was on what? On the Lord. Just like that. We cannot help ourselves, no matter how many times we're told, because that is just our nature. Makes you really think about the word of acceptance, what it means to accept oneself, because that is just who you are. You're being pulled by this nature of yours that's making you who you are today. And that nature is to be worked with, says Krishna. Don't resist it, but work with it in the light of the scriptures, which is what we keep on saying. Align your nature with your profession. Align the profession with the nature. Align the lifestyle with the nature, with the profession. Let it all be integrated. Okay, why is this? Because every nature, swabhava, has a need to be expressed. It wants to be expressed. Isn't this an experience that you have? It wants to be expressed. If it's not expressed, what happens? We get frustrated. We don't feel there's a meaning in life. We feel like life is empty if we're not having an avenue of expressing our swabhava, our nature. An artist wants to do what? Wants to put it out on paper. Not only in a 2D format, but also a 3D format. What happens if you stop an artist and say, don't? No, you can't paint. What's going to happen? Are they going to be happy? No, instant frustration. Because I stopped their swabhava. Teacher has a need to explain. If a teacher is not explaining, they get as frustrated as an artist. A researcher has a need to find solutions to problems. If they're not finding solutions to problems, whether in the medical industry, whether in a technical industry, whether in a scientific industry, there's frustration. Okay, so what's the conclusion here? If our lifestyle is compatible with our nature, then work becomes satisfying, life becomes satisfying. Mohat api karishyasi tat yad na ichasi. So mohat, because of delusion, because of ignorance, the jiva will helplessly be compelled to perform its nature, to express its nature through various venues, through various avenues of expression. Okay, as we spoke about here in this diagram, the jiva being constantly driven by its vasanas, to which it is to surrender to, these gears are constantly spinning because of what? Because of my vasanas. And as we explained before, these vasanas or samskaras are a product of many lifetimes. Therefore, in this life, the little person called Andre, called Nenu, called whatever name is, finds themselves again and they want to what? Claim ownership of my. That is not possible because it is not yours. It is a product of many other people who have lived many other lifetimes. Therefore, we simply get educated. This ego gets educated. It says, okay, how can I serve the whole? How can I serve myself and the whole? So it's all one harmony, and that's called grace. Okay, what about the jnani? Same thing. The buddhi that's understood its nature is also compelled by what? Samskaras, which means the jnani still does according to their nature. If they want to teach, they will teach. If they want to be alone and get married, they will be alone and get married. If they want to go on a farm, they go on a farm. If they want to go to a different country, they'll go on a different country. Same thing as before, nothing changes. And this is what Krishna is saying here. Your swabhava will dictate what kind of life we live. So question is, are we accepting? Can we look around and say, this is my life. This is it. It's never going to be any different, most likely. It's not going to be ever different. This is it. You know, as little kids, when we're like 15 and 16, we always imagine, wow, my life is going to be so good. Is it? Is it like that? Is it accurate to what we imagined? Probably a big space between that, a big gap. That's called jiva srishti, right? Projections. But how is our life actually? It is like this. Because my swabhava makes me who I am as a person. Okay, now verse 61 wants to say there is no point resisting our swabhava because it is governed by maya. Verse 61, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya.
The Lord remains at the seat of the intellect of causing all beings to move, revolve by the magic of his Maya, like those figures which are mounted on a machine are made to revolve.
So those figures which are mounted on a machine, and just talking about a wheel with pots and the water's falling into those pots and it's turning like a wheel. So what Krishna wants to say here, ultimately, one doesn't need idols actually to have a relationship, even though it can be helpful. But one doesn't need idols to have a relationship with the God, because that God is already myself in a form of consciousness. Instead, what Krishna says is to recognize Ishvara tishtati hrideshe sarva bhutanam. That means sarva bhutanam. That means Ishvara is obtaining in all elements. That means the Lord to whom I am offering, to whom I am giving, resides where? It says in your very intellect, the awareing principle. Are we aware of this conversation? Yes, that is the Lord. That is Paraprakriti. That is the higher nature of the Lord. How about of this? Are you aware of that? Yes, that is the Lord. That is the higher nature of the Lord. But the actual sound that you heard, that sound, that is the lower nature, Aparaprakriti. But the awareness of it is Paraprakriti. So therefore, Krishna says, the I, as the Lord, obtain in your very buddhi as the awareing principle. That means my higher nature. The question is, what prevents us from recognizing that higher nature of the Lord? What is it that has created this huge transmigration process, one life to the next, to never recognize him as he truly is, as the Lord truly is? What is that reason? The buddhi's preoccupation with what?
The three gunas.
Yeah, the three gunas, constant sounds, visuals, tastes, smells, constant. Never looking at to that unchanging awareness, but the changes, but the modifications, but the gunas, but the experience. Lack of scriptural knowledge. It never comes into the scriptures. What is this old stuff? It's only for old people. It never comes to that long enough to listen with sincerity. Analogy. Imagine picking up a dirty stone. Okay, you walk over there, pick up a dirty stone, and you thought it had a shine. You know, when we walk by, you walk over there, you pick it up, and you go, well, it's not shining as much as I thought it's shining. I'll just throw it back into the pile of mithya rocks. What happened there? Only if you pick that rock up and took your time, effort to rub, to investigate, nididhyasanam, time, and you will eventually find what? That shine, that beautiful rock, which is actually a piece of gold. But because the person did not take their time, they threw it with that pile of mithya rocks with all of the other ones. In that same manner, why is it that a jiva transmigrates one life after the next? Because that satyam, the awareing principle, the shine, is discarded as just another thing. It's just, existence, consciousness, the brain is alive. Just throw into the pile of worldly objects, never stopping to investigate. That is why the buddhi is still obsessed for most on what's called the lower nature, aparaprakriti. Brahmayan. Brahmayan means causing to move. So this paraprakriti, this higher nature of the Lord, in association with its maya, what happens? It is activating or causing the three bodies, causing to function what? The three bodies or the five sense organs, the organs of perception and the organs of action. All of your eyes right now, your eyes, your ears, your tongue, everything is happening. Why? Because the body, aparaprakriti, is pervaded by what? The higher nature of the Lord, paraprakriti. So this paraprakriti is activating or causing to function the three bodies or the five koshas. Therefore, physical seeing is taking place because of what right now? Physical seeing. You're seeing this right now is taking place because of what? The relationship between what? Paraprakriti and aparaprakriti, the lower nature and the higher nature. That means I am the one that's always behind the seeing, behind the tasting, behind the hearing. But the actual process of hearing, process of seeing is all lower nature. It's done by this mechanical body. And how does the Lord activate the three bodies? What are these three bodies? The causal body, Karana Sharira, Sukma Sharira, Stula Sharira, subtle body, physical body. How does he activate all of this? Yantra Arudhani Mayaya. like a machine by the power of his Maya Shakti. Maya Shakti like a machine. Very simple example. Suppose everyone is an appliance. Okay. Lorena, what appliance would you like to be?
Blender.
Rani.
I like to be a nice big pot.
And Robert.
A drill.
Great. And I'll be a kettle. Okay. So we're all appliances now. Yes. We shake heads. We're all appliances. Okay. So we all have different functions. Someone needs a blender. Someone needs a pot. Someone needs a kettle. Someone needs we got a mixer. Okay. I need a blender, please. I need a pot, please. Okay. You may need a kettle and so on. Okay. So we all need each other, don't we? But how can we be an appliance? How can we shine our appliance hood if there's no electricity? We can't. That means one same electricity is shining through all of us. That means the nature that we are as an appliance will be different from your nature. But the sameness is the electricity principle, which is equated in this case to para-prakriti, but the appliance itself is apara-prakriti, the lower nature. Now, in this example, it uses pots. Pots mounted on what? On a wheel. That wheel represents your life. Each pot represents a day. Now, what pours into every single pot? Water. When the water pours into the jiva, what happens? It turns, it turns, it turns, it turns, it turns. What's the liquid? Prarabdha karma. That means every day when you wake up, you got a new day. Prarabdha karma falls into your day upon waking. What happens? It causes you to move. Next day causes you to move. Like that, the jiva revolves like a machine constantly due to its prarabdha karma. And what happens as it keeps on revolving around that wheel? As that wheel, it starts to wear out. And as it wears out, eventually falls down. It's called physical death. Now, as that liquid called prarabdha karma falls into those spots, the jiva does what? It revolves in life, which is why Krishna keeps on saying you cannot stop acting because your swabhava causes you to act. And every time we act, what happens? Punya, papa, karma we generate. And every time we generate punya, papa, karma, it demands a new body to keep on revolving. Therefore, rebirth. Therefore, you can't stop it because your nature compels the jiva to keep on revolving endlessly. And punya, papa always comes to that wheel. It never comes onto some other wheel because that will be an unfair system. You'll be afraid, oh my God, someone's knocking on my door because someone else committed a crime. You committed a crime. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Well, yes, you did. Imagine that. It would be very scary. That means the results of our actions always come back onto us, the individual, never someone else. And for that to happen, we need a new body, a new wheel, which will continue revolving next life and next life and next life, like that. So therefore, if the jiva is not revolving, according to the scriptures, it is revolving according to what? It's vasanas, samskaras, which is why we need a police force, which is why we need the government. If the jiva is not willing to take control, we need to impose rules. Say, don't hurt yourself and don't hurt other people because your nature compels you to act in this world. Now, let's bring an objection. That means now that Ishvara is the cause of all sins. Because after all, I'm not the one that's putting prarabdha karma into my pots. I'm not the one that's spinning and, causing me to helplessly act. Does that not mean that Ishvara is the cause of all sins? Right? He's the one that makes the wheel move. He's the one that, because of whom that prarabdha karma keeps pouring to every pot. Is that a fair question? It's a very common question. Isn't God responsible for all of the sins in this world? Because he's the governor of this universe. The answer is no. Because Ishvara, God, is called Samanya Karanam and Jiva's free will is called Vishesha Karanam. Before I explain that, it's like this. Ishvara provides what? Para-prakriti, provides awareness to the individual and provides what? Provides the materials of the world. Does he not? The materials of the world is apara-prakriti, that is Ishvara, and the awareness, para-prakriti, the higher nature, is also Ishvara. It just provides it. But what the jiva does with the materials is up to whom? It's up to the jiva. That means like a petrol, put petrol inside a car. Whether I use that petrol to crush the car into someone else and cause trouble, whose fault is that? Do you take the petrol to the court? No, they take you, the driver, the buddhi, to the court. Therefore, Ishvara is like that. It just provides the petrol. Here, my dear child, here's the world. But if you want to jump off the cliff, that's your stuff. If you want to not jump off, that is also your stuff. which is why Ishvara is called Samanya Karanam. Samanya means general cause of our thoughts. It is that by which our thoughts are possible. Brain cells are possible. The process of objects in our thoughts are possible because they belong to the world. Ishvara is in the form of the world. So Ishvara is what? God is what? The general cause of this movement, this machine. But who's the specific cause? The Vishesha Karanam? The Jiva's free will. Okay, what we do with this material and how we sculpt this material that is given to us, that is our fault. That is our doing. Therefore, no, Ishvara is not responsible for any sin nor good in this world. Who is responsible for it? It is the Jiva specifically. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.